When it comes to your retirement, do you want to have the same old plan everyone else has? Of course not. You're unique and have your own goals and dreams. Don't be treated just like a number. This is your retirement. So it's time to think differently. And you're in luck because you've found the Retire Your Way podcast with ILG Financial. At ILG Financial, you won't find generic, run-of-the-mill plans containing the same old cookie-cutter solutions. Dave, Chase, and the ILG Financial team focus on building one retirement at a time using their Think Differently philosophy. And that means your own comprehensive plan with customized solutions built to achieve just one goal, yours. So put on your Think Differently hats and get ready to take back control of your retirement today and for all the tomorrows to come. ILG Financial's Retire Your Way podcast was created just for you, and it's starting right now.
Welcome to the Retire Your Way podcast. I'm Ron Stutz along with Chase Lopez, and we have a special guest today as well. We're going to talk to him in just a moment here. Chase Lopez, of course, at ILG Financial. If you would like to have a conversation with the folks at ILG Financial about your financial situation, call 540-720-5656. That is 540-720-5656. Income, legacy, growth. It's all right here at ILG Financial. And it's about helping you plan for retirement your way so you can achieve your financial goals. Chase Lopez, as I mentioned, is here, and we have a special guest today, Hamilton Morales. And I'm just going to turn the microphone on to these two guys and let them take it away. So, guys, it's all yours.
Hey, thanks for the intro, Ron. As always, very good to talk to you as well. And like you said, we've got Hamilton Morales. He's the Senior Vice President at Financial Independence Group, and he's actually a Social Security expert. So we're very happy to have him on the podcast here today. How you doing, Hamilton?
Good morning, Chase. I'm doing well. Hope you are.
Oh, doing great. Doing even better now that we're on the podcast. So obviously Social Security, right? That's probably the number one question that folks have with respect to retirement planning, right? Everyone has a Social Security check, or most folks do, right? If they have their working credits, we'll kind of get into that today.
Right.
But all of the different ways to turn on Social Security, all of the different rules. I think one of the things that I get from a lot of folks is, unfortunately, there's no school lessons on Social Security, right? It's all kind of people have to figure it out on their own.
Well, not only do they have to figure it out, which is tough enough as it is, especially when you get on the Social Security website and you read what you can and can't do, and the way they word things, you can interpret it different ways. But on top of that, if you need any help, where do you go? You can't really go to Social Security. And the reason why is because they're not allowed to give advice. And so if you don't know how to ask the question correctly, you don't know what kind of answer you're going to get. And so they can't say, oh, did you mean this or did you mean that? They're just going to answer the question as you ask it. And if you don't ask it correctly, you could get something very different than what you were expecting.
Boy, I'm glad you brought that up, because I have countless conversations with clients where they say, yeah, I called Social Security just to ask this one question. And first of all, they were on hold for, 30 minutes to an hour.
Right.
And then they got someone on the phone. And to your point, the person on the phone is very vague and says things that you alluded to, where they're like, hey, we can't necessarily give advice, but here's how it works.
Right.
So really, as a financial planning firm and as folks' financial planner, our goal is to kind of shed some light on these issues, right, as far as Social Security, and actually give people advice on, what to do based on their specific situation. And we actually lean quite a bit on you to kind of help us out with those things. So that's why I'm super, super excited for you to be on the podcast today, so we can give some, at least general information about Social Security that maybe folks haven't heard before.
Yeah, Chase, you kind of hit the nail on the head on that. When we're talking about a firm like yours where you're able to sit down with these people and we're able to give advice, and the reason why we can is because we know their situation. We understand their situation. We've sat down with them. We know when they're planning on retiring. You know what what they're planning on doing, what type of income they need, where that income's going to come from. And so we're able to give advice because we know the situation. Unfortunately, Social Security doesn't know that situation, and so they can't give advice primarily for that reason. The other reason is, well, by law, they can't do it. But, they can only answer the question. And again, and this happens to you guys when you guys call me and you guys have questions for me, I start asking questions back so I can get a better understanding of really what are they wanting to know? What is the real crux of the question, so I can make sure that I'm answering it in the way that they need it to be answered. And so that allows me to, we go back and forth in making sure that we have a clear understanding. Social Security will not do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So with that said, let's kind of dive right in. So I actually pulled some stuff up just about Social Security in general. And again, you're the expert. So if I misspeak or anything, just correct me, because that's what you're here for.
Yeah.
But basically, Social Security, the Social Security Act, it was passed in January of 1935 under President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And it was really built as, and this is where I'd like you to jump in just a little bit. It was really built as kind of an insurance, right, for folks of an older age, right? Saying, hey, we want to make sure that these folks at least have some income coming in. And it was originally supposed to be a lot like other insurance that we have, right? A lot of people pay in, and a certain amount of people get a payout. Not everyone, and that's how it kind of works for generations moving forward.
Yeah, so when you look at what was going on during that period of time, we know that it was the Great Depression. And before the Great Depression, you have to look at, well, how did people save for retirement during that period of time? They didn't have 401ks. They probably didn't have pensions back then. So how did people save for retirement? Well, they would put money in the stock market and grow it that way. They would put money in the banks. They would probably own a business. And so when they were ready to retire, they would either sell that business or the children would take it over and then take care of mom and dad. And then the last part was if you had a farm, same idea. They would, when they were retired, they'd either sell the farm or the kids would take over and take care of mom and dad. So once the Great Depression happened, well, the first thing that happened was the stock market. It crashed. So if you had money in the stock market, you predominantly lost all your money. Number two, because the stock market crashed, people started to go try to get their money from the banks, and you had the run on the banks. So now all the banks defaulted and had no money. Well, because nobody had any money because of the first two, they weren't buying goods and services from these companies. And so these companies eventually went out of business. And because these companies went out of business, the farmers had nobody to sell their crops to. And so the farms went out of business. So now you have all four forms of retirement are now gone. And there was no safety net. So FDR looked at that and said, you know what, it would be great to have a safety net for people, again, not to be their retirement, but to supplement or essentially keep people out of poverty. And that's the reason why we had Social Security benefits. That's why they signed it into law at that time.
Boy, and that's a great point, because I think ever since then, right, we're going on, almost 100 years of that being the case, right? Ever since then, I feel like, just based on, our experience talking with clients and such, that the use for Social Security has certainly evolved since then.
Sure.
I was looking up statistics this morning, and I think something like for 1 in 5 households, 80% of their retirement income is solely based on Social Security. So that creates some challenges, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I can even give you a real life story on that. My mom and dad. My dad was very blue collar. He was a mechanic, had an 8th grade education. He immigrated here to the U.S. and worked very, very hard, but didn't make a whole lot of money. Now, my mom, on the other hand, ended up going back to school, getting her degree, nursing degree, then getting her master's, and ultimately taught at the collegiate level. Still didn't make a ton of money, but obviously did better. So now you fast forward and you look today, they predominantly live on Social Security. My dad has a very small 401k. My mom has a small 401k too as well. Now they're IRAs now, and that's it. That's what they live on. They live in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is not a cheap place to live, but they do it. How do they do it? Well, it's all based off of money coming in and how much money going out. Right? And so you live within your means, you're able to do it. So they would actually fit that statistic that you just gave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and thanks for sharing that. Really do appreciate it. And I would argue, tying back to what we kind of started off this conversation with, is if a majority of our income is going to come from Social Security, right? That even that magnifies the importance for the savings that folks do have, right? We have to make sure that is going to, A, be able to supplement the Social Security, but B, also last for and plan for, things like longevity and things like that.
Yeah, longevity is a key. When I do seminars all over the country. I actually just got back from doing 2 down in Lutz, Florida, and then 1 yesterday over in Salisbury, North Carolina. And one of the slides that I have is risk in retirement, and the last one on that list is longevity risk. Risk of living too long. I know that sounds kind of weird, but when you're talking about money, that is a risk. The one thing we want to make sure is no matter how long we live, our money lasts until we are gone. And so when you look at the different forms of income that can be generated for yourself, one is, of course, Social Security, and for those who are able to have a pension, you could have a pension. Well, you get those deposits in your account every single month for the rest of your life. So it's irrelevant how long you live, that money is going to always be deposited in that account. So longevity at that point is taken off the table. So that begs the question, can I do that with other monies that I have? Can I generate that lifetime income so no matter how long I live, that money is always going to be deposited? And so that's all encompassed inside of an income plan. Social Security is a part of that income plan.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And, that's one of the things that and Ron, I know you're just sitting there listening, but I know that over our podcast, we've brought up income planning multiple times, right? That's really one of the most important things that we want to make sure that we addressed first and foremost. And to your point, Hamilton, Social Security fits, right into that puzzle. Now,
absolutely.
With that said, right, let's kind of get into the nitty gritty, for lack of a better
the fun stuff.
So the number one question we get about Social Security, and I'm sure you get it often, you've gotten it from us, is what are some of the things that folks should take into consideration when they're talking about turning on Social Security, whether we're talking about a single person or a married couple?
Well, you hit the first part of it is, are you single? Are you married? If you are single, were you divorced? And then did you have a qualifying marriage, which means you were married for at least 10 consecutive years before getting that divorce? All those things come into play. When are you planning on retiring? When is your spouse planning on retiring? What other forms of income do you have coming in? Do you have a pension? Do you have rental income? Did you I say do a good job in saving for retirement with 401ks, IRAs, things of that nature? That's really important. And then the most important is how much income do you desire or need once you do retire? Do you want to keep the same amount of income? Can that income come down some? All these things come into play when deciding to turn on your Social Security benefits, because if I turn it on early, well, that's fine. I can turn it on as early as 62, but it comes with some caveats. And the caveat is, well, you don't get the full benefit amount. It's going to be reduced. And if you decide that, that's not enough money, I need to go back to work, now you have this thing called the earnings test that you have to deal with if you're under full retirement age. So all these things you have to consider when you turn on Social Security. And another one that a lot of people don't think about is life expectancy. What is your health like now? What is your health history as it relates to your family? Again, we don't have the crystal ball. We don't know when you're going to pass away, but we've got to plan around these things. And I think, Chase, you would agree with this, is that when you put a plan together, you're putting a plan together for somebody living 30 plus years in retirement.
Oh, 100%. You literally
have
took
to.
the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is, obviously, there's a lot of considerations to your point, and every single person their situation is a little bit different, right?
Sure.
So whenever we're building out plans here for folks at ILG, every single plan is unique to that individual person or household, and one person may turn on Social Security early for a variety of reasons, and one person might wait for a whole host of other reasons, right? So it all goes to kind of what you were talking about, where you build out a holistic plan, and Social Security is just kind of one part of it. So you mentioned one thing, and I just wanted to kind of touch on this because we get this question a lot here at the office, turning on Social Security early. I'm sure you've heard this. Folks will say, hey, I've paid into Social Security my whole life. I want to get the money as soon as possible. They're not going to hold my money any longer. A whole list of things. What are some of those downsides for turning it on early? For folks that are thinking about that.
So obviously there's people that have to turn it on early. They don't really have a choice. They've got to do that. So we're not talking about people like that. We're talking about people who actually have a choice from the standpoint of, I could turn it on early, I could turn it on later, I've got plenty of income coming in, so on and so forth. One of the things that we look at, especially if they're married, this is huge, is the higher of the two individuals as far as the Social Security is concerned, we really want that benefit to grow as high as possible, so maximum age 70. And the reason why we want it to do that is not necessarily just for the person who's the record holder, but we also have to look at their surviving spouse. So if that person predeceases their spouse gets to step up into that higher benefit. So that benefit's going to be around for 2 lifetimes, which is key. So the chances of maximizing that particular benefit, if you will, is greater than if it's just an individual and it's just going to be an individual's benefit and that's it. Once that individual dies, it's gone. So we take that into consideration too as well in looking at that. But for those people that say, I want my money now, it's fine. It's their money. They obviously can choose what they want to, but it does come at a cost. And that cost is a permanent reduction. So it'll never go up outside of cost of living adjustments. It will never go up from there. And then, like I said, the earnings test, if you decide you want to go back to work prior to your full retirement age. So you've got to deal with those two things. And then if you do live past your life expectancy, you're leaving money on the table. Typically, the crossover is pretty short when you turn it on early. I think it's in the high 70s. So what's going to end up happening is that money, if you live past your late 70s going into your 80s, you've been better off if you waited till 70 to turn that on. You're going to be getting more money out of the system, if you will, if you do it later. However, that's not a reason to do or not do. And that's really what I want to get across to people is you really need to look at the math, number one, but then number two, how does it affect you? Not just now, but how does that affect you long term? And I'm not talking about just Social Security. I'm talking about your investments and your other things like that you have to look at. How is it going to affect you positively and or negatively? And so that's really where we put the plan together and we look at what is best for you in your particular situation. And then from there, again, it's your money. You get to make the decision when you want to turn it on.
Yeah, and that's a great point, right? We shouldn't be making, whether it be Social Security or any sort of planning decision, right? We shouldn't be making it based on, one simple fact or one simple, thought process. The one that I used as an example is, hey, I just want my money, right?
Right.
Which, to your point, is reasonable, but we want to make sure that we take into account all of those other factors. Specifically, I kind of wanted to drill into that survivor step up that you had alluded to.
Sure.
I think that's one thing that a lot of folks just isn't isn't a piece of the puzzle that they aren't necessarily thinking about.
Right.
So as you said, the larger for a married couple, right, the larger of the two Social Security checks, the surviving spouse keeps the larger of the two checks. So to your point, the argument would be, hey, the bigger check, we want that to grow more, so that, you know, that you use the best kind of phrase that, and I'm actually going to steal it moving forward.
You can.
It's going to be used over 2 lifetimes, right?
Right.
So that's the most valuable of those Social Security checks, and it goes back to what you were talking about. When we're doing income planning, not only are we looking at income and retirement, but one of the key things that we want to look at is survivor income. Well, that's what we call it here at ILG, right? Which is, hey, if one spouse were to predecease the other, what is that income situation going to look like? So we have to take into account Social Security, but also if you have a pension, you know, most of the time you don't keep the surviving spouse doesn't keep the whole pension, right? They'll keep a percentage of it depending on how that's set up. So all of those factors kind of tie into that survivor benefit that, you know, Social Security offers.
Yeah. So, you know, and the beauty part of this whole thing is that if you have the lesser of the two benefits, go ahead and turn it on early. Right. Go ahead and get the best benefit, because the chances of you having that particular benefit till your life expectancy is fairly slim, because chances are your spouse who has the higher benefit most likely is going to predecease you. Therefore, you're going to forego your benefit and step up to the higher one. So there's a good chance that you forego your benefit prior to your life expectancy. So go ahead and turn that on now. Right. Again, you got to be careful with the earnings test if you're below full retirement age or whatever, but that makes a lot of sense. The higher of the two is the one that we want to focus on. So understanding what your options are when it comes to the survivors or widows benefits, what I tell the crowd, if you will, when I do seminars is that if you have the unfortunate timing of losing a spouse early being, let's say, in your 60s, you have not turned on your benefit yet. When you lose your spouse, you actually have options. You can turn yours on now and turn the widow's on later, or you can turn the widow's on now and turn yours on later, depending on which one's higher down the road. And so you really have these options that if you don't know how to ask the question to Social Security, you'll never know, because in Social Security's mind, everybody wants to get the higher benefit and they want to get it now.
Right.
Oh, well, that may not be the best thing to do right now. We may want that one to grow, because if you're 62 and you take the widow's benefit, guess what? That widow's benefit's going to be reduced because you're under full retirement age. So why not take your benefit now, reduced, wait until your full retirement age, and then be able to step up to the higher benefit without that higher benefit being reduced because you're at full retirement age when you can take it. So just little strategies like that are key.
Boy, that's a great point. And, you know, that is one of the things that we talk to a lot of folks about is, and I'm sure you see this as well, Hamilton, is for most couples, right, one person is, you know, you have to divide and conquer, right? So one half of the relationship is taking care of a lot of the financial things, and you know the other half of the relationship takes care of other things, right? That's kind of naturally, that's just kind of how the duty falls, whether it be the husband or the wife. But to your point, if your other half were to predecease you, you want to make sure that you have all of the information that's readily available to you to make these decisions. If you, for example, weren't the spouse that was taking care of all of the financial, you know, part of the equation in your relationship.
Well, Chase, think about it. You know, you lose a spouse, it's devastating. And now, if you don't have somebody to lean on to help walk you through all the things you have to navigate, including Social Security, that means you're doing all this stuff on your own. So mentally, emotionally, that is so difficult to do. So if, you know, anything that people can take away from this, I would say make sure you have somebody like you guys that you can go to help walk you through not only on the financial side as far as investments and other income and bills and things of that nature, but also how to navigate through the Social Security piece, because again, depending on whether you've already turned your benefit on or not, you may have options. And so that's very important.
Well, we've spent the past few minutes talking about Social Security, which is such an important topic for so many folks. And, of course, Chase Lopez, special guest today, has been Hamilton Morales, Senior Vice President at Financial Independence Group and a Social Security expert. We're going to come back with another podcast. In our next show, you will hear more about Social Security and some of the common questions that folks ask. The great thing about ILG Financial is the access to experts all across the financial and retirement spectrum at your disposal. And if you'd like to get in touch with ILG Financial, all you have to do is call 540-720-5656. That's 540-720-5656. Talk with Dave Lopez or Chase Lopez, and you can find out all about income, legacy, and growth. It's all right here at ILG Financial. It's all about helping you plan for retirement your way so you can achieve your financial goals. Join us for that next podcast. We appreciate your listening today. And next time we'll talk more about Social Security. I'm Ron Stutz. Have a great day, and thank you for listening. The information provided is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. The views presented today are those of Dave Lopez and do not necessarily represent the views of the Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Investment advisory services offered through Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Alpha Star and ILG Financial, LLC are independent entities. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Commission, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability.